What's a creepy fact about the human body you wish you never found out? So, the ovaries aren't physically connected to the fallopian tubes. The eggs shoot out into the fallopian tubes. This also means that certain other things that may go into the fallopian tubes ultimately just swim out the ends and end up floating around into the abdominal cavity. Next story. Some may find it creepy, I guess, maybe more disturbing. Tinnitus can often be neurological rather than from physical damage, meaning you can be completely deaf and still have the ringing/buzzing in your ears. As someone who has tinnitus, I've learned to filter it in day-to-day life, but it's hard to impossible to get it below a certain level of ambient noise. I'd quickly go mad if it was the only sound I could actually hear. Next story. It's a classic, but humans are born with their baby teeth and their adult teeth. The adult teeth just hang on behind the baby teeth until their time comes, which means that a toddler's face is like 50% teeth, and the skull images you can find on Google are very unsettling. Next story. Pretty much all the different fluids your body can leak. My wife got a poorly placed epidural, 2 natural births, and finally caved on 3rd and got effed up, and it was awful, but she was leaking spinal fluid. Read a story about a guy who had a runny nose, but it was brain fluid. So now I feel like I'm a crappy truck and I'm just waiting to start waking up with random leaks under me. Next story. So, young children can fully regenerate the tip of a finger if it is severed or amputated. Apparently, the younger they are, the more active stem cells they have to promote this process, which we adults lack. I don't recall what effed up place I read that from, but it has not left me since. Next story. Your body often starts preparing for death before you consciously realize something is wrong. Subtle changes happen in metabolism, smell, behavior. Even animals can detect it. The disturbing part is knowing your body can know while you still don't. Next story. Your brain can't actually feel pain. That's why surgeons can perform brain surgery on awake patients. You can feel pain in your skin, your skull, your meninges, but the organ that interprets pain itself feels none. It's unsettling to realize that the thing that screams ouch can't experience it at all. All right, y'all, the brain is a jerk and a hypocrite. He can give me, you know what, I guess the trade-off is that you have the mental ouchies, but I would rather have like my brain hurt a little bit than get sad or scared. I don't know about y'all, but I'm willing to try it out for a week, a month, maybe a year if I just didn't get sad or if I didn't wake up and say, oh, I'm gonna fail as a voice actor today. I don't want that. But if I could just take 2 Tylenols because my brain hurts a little bit and just go about my day, I would take it. I'm going to have a talk with my brain. Anyway, next story. So, number 1. Because we have no hydroreceptors in our skin, our parietal lobe, the part of our brain that translates physical stimuli, doesn't understand what wet is. The only thing that it does understand is temperature, pressure, pain, and vibration. But our conscious selves know to associate some combination of those with the sensation of wet. As an experiment, put on latex gloves and dunk said gloved hand into water. It will feel wet. Then number 2. Also, numerous cells within the body which were dormant during life reactivate themselves at the moment of death in what looks like the body's last-ditch effort to save itself. In reality, however, these cells are reacting not to death, but to unlife, as they behave in much the same way they would during fetal development. 3. Our sense of where we are in the world, as in our bodies in relation to stuff around us, is called our kinesthetic sense. This sense can be lost like any other, leading to a sensation of not being physically connected to oneself. People report feeling like they're piloting a meat suit, where every action must be deliberate, methodical, and conscious. 4. The oldest baby was a little girl named Brooke Greenberg, born with a condition so rare it has no name, stopped aging between 9 and 12 months, and stayed frozen in development for 20 years. She died of an underdeveloped trachea. Then 5. The youngest woman child to give birth in 1939 was 5 years old. She never told anyone who the father was, saying she probably doesn't even know. And finally, number 6, Hisachi Uchi was kept alive against the wishes of both himself and his wife after receiving 17 sieverts of radiation from a critical accident in Japan. The entirety of his DNA was destroyed, rendering his cells incapable of replicating, meaning that he experienced what is hopefully the one and only case of conscious decomposition. Next story. Mom was a nurse and worked in a nursing home for a few months. Sometimes on anniversaries of a widow's wedding or spouse's death, they'd say something like, I went to go be with my spouse, and go lie down, and then stop living. There was never a clear reason, and it was written up as natural causes related to old age. They'd just had their fill of life and stepped into the next adventure. Next story. It takes up to a year for all of the organs to go back in the right place after being pregnant. Also, during a C-section, they kind of just mush everything back inside and it all eventually goes back to where it's supposed to on its own. Next story. There's a fun little thing called prions, which are a incorrectly folded protein. It has given us some fun diseases like mad cow disease, zombie deer disease, Kuru, and FFI, fatal familiar insomnia. While these diseases are either genetic or spread by eating tainted meat, FFI has a fun little cousin called SFI, or sudden fatal insomnia. While extremely rare, only 3 to 5 known cases worldwide as far as I know, it can happen to anyone. Suddenly, in your late 30s, you start to lose the ability to sleep. Sleeping pills and such work in the beginning, but over time, they no longer do the trick. Once you can no longer sleep, which can take anything from a few months to a few years, you only have a few weeks to live before your body breaks down. Next story. You can, without knowing, wear down and break your teeth while sleeping. You feel tired in your jaw and can wake up with headaches, but also possible to do it when awake. It's an either and or thing called bruxism. Grinding my teeth eventually led me to breaking apart 5 teeth over 4 months. Now, I think one of my molars is cracked and I'm looking forward to future root canal treatment. Next story. I have 3. 1. Ribs can regrow. It's a problem they have to watch for if ribs are being removed for medical reasons. The tiny bud left behind on the rib cage starts a new bone. 2. Humans typically have 1 spleen, located in the upper left abdomen, but it's relatively common, around 10 to 20% of people, to have extra smaller spleens, accessory spleens or spleeniculi, and this is due to developmental variations or the body's natural ability to regenerate spleen tissue after injury, a process called splenosis. I've read cases of people having 6. Unless you have surgery near them, they rarely cause issues and you are unlikely to ever know that they are there. And 3. Children under a certain age do not have kneecaps. Next story. I had sudden sensorineural hearing loss 2 years ago after a tooth infection that tried to kill me. Yeah, the human body is a weird thing, kids. My autoimmune condition decided to attack my cochlea because it was near my tooth. But anyway, woke up one morning deaf as a post in one ear, except for the tinnitus. Got very familiar with the various textures of sound in my tinnitus. 2 weeks of oral steroids did nothing to help my hearing, but steroids injected directly into my middle ear and absorbed through the circular window into the cochlea got 80% of my word comprehension back, so yay, I guess? Next story. About 5% of our brain activity is conscious and 95% unconscious. But that's not the creepy part. The creepy part is that studies have shown the unconscious part of our brain making a decision up to several seconds before the conscious part thinks it's made its choice, and then retroactively justifying why with our conscious thoughts about it. Next story. What you perceive is not what your sensory organs perceive. It is what your brain interprets of it. Experienced after the correction of a strong outward strabismus out of my left eye, I quickly noticed that my brain perceived things on my left a little further than they were. So you stand next to a wall on your left, you put your hand on that wall, and the hand touches it before the vision part of the brain interpreted. That was weird. It didn't last more than a day or two before the brain resets the configuration. Next story. Prion diseases are absolutely terrifying. Prions are, to my limited understanding, older than viruses and bacteria and are almost impossible to kill. They won't die from fire, alcohol, or ultrasonic vibration. They live in your CS fluid and do horrible things to you. Surgical tools that have been used for brain surgery on a patient with them have to be completely destroyed and never reused. So, when I decided to record this video today, I didn't think I would learn about an ancient disease older than viruses and bacteria. What? You're telling me an ancient evil roams the earth and it's real and we can't kill it? What the hell? That's horrifying. And a lot of these stories so far have been kind of scary. But anyway, next story. Well, it's not really about a living human body, but like literally a body. Apparently, a decomposing human body emits a sweet scent, the type of overwhelmingly sweet scent that makes you instantly nauseous. Even those who often smell it get nauseous by it. Many that smell it for the first time often throw up. Things like eating way too much sugar and getting a stomachache, but then all of that sugar is a scent in the standing air. Next story. Your retina is only weakly attached to the back of the eyeball. If you injure your eye in the right way, you have extreme myopia, or if the vitreous body in your eyeball splits, your retina can tear and start peeling off. If this happens, you have very little time to troubleshoot before permanent vision loss occurs. The only treatment is a highly invasive eye surgery, and you aren't guaranteed to regain full vision even if you get it fixed in time. Symptoms include sudden flashing, new or spontaneous eye floaters, these are obvious and invasive in your vision, and a curtain-like shadow encompassing your vision. The reason I wish I never learned about it is because it's turned me into a real hypochondriac. The idea of going blind is terrifying to me, but so is the surgery. Next story. The fragility and unbelievably circumstantial, freakishly odd, and improbable amount of things that need to happen just to stay alive at any moment. Whether you think about the tiny group of heart cells that create a minuscule power plant to shock other stuff around them into action by leaking stuff that other stuff has to react to, thus creating a rhythmic enough action in a weird muscle to carry a gaseous element created during the start of the universe, but now provided to us by vegetation, to then travel a long distance in order to facilitate an even crazier group of neurons and cells and an insane amount of electrical pathways and activity to make sure you breathe without thinking, receive and interpret air compressions into sound, and photons into images through our crazy eyeballs. I mean, it's creepy as crap if you think about how lucky we are to even exist. Next story. When you're in a plane at cruising altitude and lose cabin pressure, you have about 15 seconds of useful consciousness before hypoxia sets in. That's why they tell you to put your own oxygen mask first. You'd pass out trying to help others. I'm a pilot, and this fact, it still gives me chills. Next story. Bones aren't naturally white. They can be cream, yellow, brown, red, or even black depending on minerals, medical conditions, or environment. There's a real case where a woman's bones were black, and it was only discovered after an accident during surgery. Most people never know their bone color unless bones are exposed, so you can have black bones for all you know. Next story. The baby smell that young babies have generally fades around 2 years of age. Coincidentally, this is also around the time that babies' skulls finish fusing together to get rid of that soft spot, leaving scientists to believe that what you're actually smelling is the baby's brain. Next story. Some old people who are terminally ill will one day get up and act perfectly fine, completely normal, like the sickness just disappeared, before dropping dead after a while, because their body basically gives up and stops fighting the disease. This absolutely horrified me when I learned about it. Next story. Your experience of the world, it's a figment of your imagination. Your brain takes all of the information coming from your senses, sight, sound, smell, body position, and uses the information to create your mental representation of the world as you know it. But it's all trickery. When you move your eyes, your brain ignores the input while your eyes are moving and just fills in the gaps so you don't notice. There's a blind spot in each eye where the optic nerve is connected. Your brain just does a quick generative AI fill so you don't notice it based on what's around it at the time. Now, if you take psychedelic drugs, the world will bend, shift, and distort. Take enough and maybe things will change colors and you'll see patterns flowing through and connecting everything. If you have brain damage on one side, one half of the world can cease to exist as if it were never there. You can still see everything, but your mental construct cannot comprehend that one side of everything exists. As someone with brain damage, in the right place to draw a clock, and maybe they number it from 1 to 12, but all on one side. Or maybe they just draw half a clock, and as far as they can tell, those drawings are perfectly fine. Next story. When having an operation, doctors move your organs around to get where they need to go. Once they are finished, they don't put them back. They return back all on their own. Same with being pregnant. If you have a baby in there, it moves your organs out of the way to make room. Once you give birth, they start to realign back into place on their own, like they remembered where they were. Next story. I'm always amused that the color purple doesn't exist. Our brains invented it. Purple is not violet, as purple is a mixture of red and blue, whereas violet has a definite range of wavelengths. When our brains see purple and red, which are at opposite ends of the spectrum, it sort of joins these opposite ends together and invents what we see as purple. Next story. Once born, a baby's cardiovascular system has to dramatically change, since while in the womb, the blood flow roots around the lungs completely. The change involves arteries that close off and become ligaments, holes that close, and pressures that change to push blood through the lungs. Sometimes, if a baby's heart is not formed properly, we give drugs to prevent these transformation changes from happening, because they allow the malformed heart to pump blood at least partially effectively. Next story. So, I find it interesting, but most people aren't jazzed to hear that their intestines move on their own. Special hooks are apparently required for surgery to hang them up and keep them out of the way, and when the surgery is done, they're just sloshed back in and will slurp themselves back to their preferred positions in a few days. Next story. Approximately 1 in 50 people have an unruptured brain aneurysm at any given time in the United States. Millions of people are walking around with potential time bombs in their brains, but most people will never experience a ruptured aneurysm and will pass away from natural causes without ever knowing that they were at risk of a potential sudden death. Next story. The body considers babies that are not yet babies to be parasites for a little while. Once the baby is big enough, it just fully squishes all of your organs to make space for itself. Mothers have fully lost teeth, hair, bone density, and a bunch of other things that you would have probably never even thought of if in the quest to physically make a baby inside of them, because the baby is so starved for nutrients that it will absolutely suck out whatever it needs out of you until it is grown enough to be ready for birth, needs to leave, can function on its own. For all intents and purposes, to your new mom body, a baby is a parasite and people have lost teeth and more, all from growing a kid inside of them. Next story. Last year, my sister had a teratoma, and learning what that meant still makes my skin crawl. It wasn't just a tumor, but a mass that had grown hair, teeth, and fragments of fully formed tissue, as if parts of a body had tried to assemble themselves in the wrong place. Teratomas come from stem cells that don't know when to stop becoming things, so they twist into skin, bone, muscle, and sometimes even structures that look disturbingly close to eyes. The realization that something inside a human body can quietly grow the building blocks of life, completely out of control. Next story. You can still bleed period style after a hysterectomy. I worked on a nurse advice line and saw this as a reason for call. I messaged the nurse like, hey, is that a thing? Because I'm not a nurse, I'm just more like finding urgent cares for people. But she said, even a few cells left behind can cause this. I suppose endometriosis can too. It just wasn't what I wanted to learn while experiencing menstrual issues. Next story. Our body, it will recognize the amount of CO2 in our blood, but it doesn't recognize the lack of oxygen. Increasing CO2 levels, like during exercise, is the indicator to our brain that our breathing rate should go up. And if you ever mistakenly drink methanol, it binds oxygen more strongly than our blood cells, so none of our organs end up getting any oxygen. We continue to expel CO2, and none of the oxygen we intake goes anywhere. So our body gives us no indication that we're dying or that we should even breathe harder. In fact, we breathe slower since the oxygen isn't being converted into CO2. We slowly drown to death with few signs that we're in serious trouble. Next story. The amount of people that have some sort of medical conditioning in which their body isn't operating correctly, but they don't know about it, is staggering. Diabetes, cancers, tumors, metabolic conditions, allergies, etc., all unknown. Considering that you live in your body every second of every day, it's kind of weird to not know that something isn't operating correctly, which is bizarre. Next story. My mom has a tendon on the back of her calf. This tendon is apparently found in less than 20% of people. This tendon is commonly snapped during activities such as tennis because of the movement that is required. My mom has it and managed to snap it by stepping off of a curb, and I'm now careful coming off curbs in case I have to. Next story. So, more interesting than creepy, your balls need to stay at a lower temperature to function properly than in the abdominal cavity. This is to make mature sperm cells, so it's essential that the testicles stay out of the body and in the scrotum. The scrotum has a little muscle, the cremasteres, which contracts if they're too cold and relaxes if they're too hot, making the testicles hang higher or lower depending on the outside temperature. This is why in a pool your balls get so wrinkly. It's because they get pulled more into the body so that the temperature stays in that sweet spot. Next story. Nothing, but I love telling people body facts that ruin their day. Did you know if it weren't for your stomach acid, a large octopus could safely crawl through you, mouth to anus? Then, the adult human anus/rectum expand enough to accommodate an adult raccoon, and a human in a sterile environment can survive for 3 days without their skin, less if you add salt, and that you won't die from blood loss. You will die from hyperthermia, as you will have lost the ability to feel and regulate temperature. If OP in that story provided one more anus fact, I would have started looking at them a little bit sideways, like the Dokes meme, like, I can't prove it, but I feel like there's more you're not telling us. Like, you're into something, and this is why you know these particular anus facts, but they only gave us 2. 3 or more, I'm gonna start raising my eyebrows, so OP, you're good for now. But anyway, next story. So, I am most creeped out by split brain experiments that show you have another seemingly conscious being within your brain that is totally overridden and forced to be along for the ride. I'm also bothered by something HM said. repeatedly where each time he reset, he would talk about how it was only just now becoming a conscious, self-aware being. Next story. When obese people are cremated, they sometimes give off a grease/cooking hamburger smell. Also, obese people are often cremated earlier in the day when the retort is at its coolest to prevent grease fires and excessive smoke and emissions. Morbid warning, but think of how much smoke is created when you cook 80-20 ground beef or bacon. Next story. Everything to do with the vagina, and also how hormones or lack thereof ruin women. Pregnancy is a nightmare, and then they have to deal with menopause, and that isn't touching all of the medical issues that come with it. It makes me think that having a vagina would be a nightmare. Next story. Semen has the only known hormone that its primary job is to impact another person's body. It's called prostaglandins. It makes vaginal and uterine muscles contract to acid sperm to reach its goal. Take this with a grain of salt, though, that this is what I remember from my freshman year of college. I remember feeling so creeped out that someone else's hormones affect me. Next story. If you have migraines, you can develop olfactory hallucinations, phantosmia, which are phantom smells, i.e. smelling things that aren't there. The vast majority of the time, the smells aren't pleasant. When it happens to me, I smell wet dog, roadkill, rotting meat, stale cigarette smoke, fish, natural gas, funeral home flowers, campfire. I don't mind the smell of a campfire, but smelling it when there isn't one is wild. Phantosmia can happen for other reasons too. Long COVID, sinus infections, stroke, autism, schizophrenia, and other neurological or ENT conditions. Next story. So, not truly creepy, unless you are afraid of being uncertain at any time, in a way, or some sort, but as everyone knows, I hope, now is not physically real, so we never actually live in the present. And more than that, if you actually look at an object, at a door for example, the time it takes the light to arrive from the door to your eyes and then the brain to process it takes some time. So, in a way, we are experiencing life a bit in the past. We perceive things the way they were an amount of time ago, even if that time is very small. So yeah, next story. If you split the brain down the middle, your body will have two consciousnesses, one that is unable to participate the same way the other will. I want to be clear, this isn't like having two different people in your head. It more so has to do with coordination between different functions of the body. The most interesting part of the studies about this is when tricking one hemisphere of the brain into coordinating the body to do something. The other hemisphere reacts as if it was in their thought process all along. Anyway, the creepy fact is that this confirms there is no free will, so have fun with that. Next story. There is a lag between what happens in reality versus when you see it happen. It's because it takes a little bit more than 0.0 seconds for your brain to receive and interpret the light from your eyes. You never notice it because your brain essentially guesses what is going to happen, and it fills it in for you. Same with color in your peripheral vision. You can trick your brain, though, with a ticking clock. Watch a second hand for a few moments, and then look away with your eyes, but not your head for a moment, and then look back. You might notice the second hand takes a little bit too long to start ticking again. It's like time froze for a second. But no, your brain can't predict movement, so it assumes the second hand stays still when you look away. Next story. Commotio cordis. If you're hit on the chest in just the right way, at a specific point in the heartbeat cycle, you can go into cardiac arrest and die within minutes. It's like an IRL version of a critical hit. That and the fact that we spent 7 months in the womb constantly drinking our own pee. Next story. Involuntary boners are actually intentional. The wiener, it's not a muscle, so you can't exactly get it hard on command. But what happens when a body part doesn't move for long enough? It atrophies. Your random boners are stopping your wang from getting even smaller. Also, this is something that happens through hormone signals, meaning that if you have something reducing your testosterone, those morning woods won't happen anymore. So you need to have some action with it regularly if you don't want it to shrivel up. Next story. If you give birth, it will take days for your organs to sloop back into their original positions, and you can feel the movement. I knew it happened after C-sections, but it didn't occur to me that I would have the same amount of negative space in my abdomen afterwards. Next story. Context. Eyes have light-sensitive neurons located in the retina of the eye, which are capable of transducing light into electrical signals, allowing us to see. Creepy fact. Skin also has very similar rod or cone-shaped light-sensitive neurons, I forget which one, that pick up light, allowing the skin to also see to some extent. Next story. My high school biology teacher told us that a woman could grow a wiener at any time, at any age. When I mentioned this to people, they are shocked and think it's not true. Could it not be that you could have some major hormonal swing and grow a wiener somehow? I hope it's not true, but I believed it for over half my life to be possible. Next story. Your consciousness, what you feel is you, sits in the frontal lobe. It shares the brain with several other intelligent functions with different tasks. Some are more intelligent than others, that is, intelligent enough to communicate with. They just often choose not to. Then, my grandfather smoked 4 packs a day, but one day, a voice in his head said, and he didn't even think in voices, told him, "Stop smoking or you will die." It was a spiritual experience for him, but I am a bit more skeptic when it comes to spiritual stuff, so I didn't take his story seriously. Then I read about a woman who was saved by a voice in her head who told her that they have a brain tumor, and then she must seek help. And as I read up on this, apparently, sometimes our subconscious talks to us when it needs to. All right, y'all, we have read that story about the woman having the voices tell her about the brain tumor on this channel. Maybe it's happened to multiple people, but I know we have read it in another medical video. And I think this is the first time I've read a story reference another story, so that's a first. We don't always get first here. But anyway, next story. So, I find some things about the way a woman's body alters during pregnancy, such as the ribs expanding outward to accommodate the baby inside the belly as it grows and then retracts, and the whole fallopian tube function, like the way the insides burn when the hungry baby tries to feed from the mother via tube, but she hasn't eaten yet that day because she just wasn't hungry, and waste is removed through the same tube for feeding. I, of course, am also intrigued, amazed, impressed by the woman's ability to do that, plus so much more, but it freaked me out when I learned, and I'm fully aware that pregnancy plus birth plus babies just ain't for me. Next story. Your body, it has no alert system for when it is running out of oxygen, just when carbon dioxide is building up. So if you end up in an environment where nitrogen or something has pushed out all of the oxygen, you will not feel like you're suffocating. You'll get a little lightheaded, maybe feel some shortness of breath, then fall asleep forever. Next story. All right, so it doesn't take a lot to kill you. Just a slight imbalance in a single element can cause a small but deadly chain of reactions. Not totally related to the previous point, but a lot of those big bad diseases such as cancer start with very small things going wrong. Source: I had the pleasure of being tortured with this information in university. Next story. Sometimes, if you have a very heavy viral illness that is bad and lasts long enough, your body can just glitch out into a chronic illness. In boot camp in '09, had a mono-like illness last for a little over 2 months. Got sick every year afterwards with bronchitis until COVID started. Found out last year I have hypovolemic POTS because of that illness. All right, guys, so did you know that after a woman gives birth, her organs go back in and move around by themselves? I bet you didn't know that. Sorry, that's just the fact that I think we got like 3, 4, 5 times throughout the course of this video, which I didn't know, but you know, we heard it a lot. I will say though, for these type of videos, if you don't want to become a hypochondriac, maybe it's best you just forget everything you learned, otherwise you will live in constant fear like a few of the people mentioned. Sometimes I'm like, man, I really wish I retained all of the information from all of the channels I read for, and then other times it's today where I'm thinking, you know what, I don't want to retain this information. Sometimes bliss is fun. I just want to frolic through the fields and flowers. Can I do that? I want to have a little fun, and you're allowed to join me if you would like. All right, I will meet you in the nearest field. But anyway, guys, we're at the end of the video. Thank you all so much for watching, commenting, and have a good one. Bye-bye!